So you may not have been a fan of completing the square. What we're going to do today is talk about the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula is a helpful way, again, another way that you could solve any quadratic equation, as long as you plug in the values into the formula. Where does this formula come from? Well, if we remember, all the quadratic equations are in the format ax squared plus bx plus c. And you'll see that all of those elements are taken into the quadratic formula. You'll see an a here, also right there. You can see that there's a c here. You could see the b value is over here as it's squared and as a negative b. All that leads us to the x value, which is going to be the roots or the solution to the quadratic equation. What I'm going to give now is an explanation of where this equation comes from, starting with our general expanded form of a quadratic equation. If you're someone who doesn't like to know how, that's fine. You can just wait a minute and then we're going to get back. But I think it's interesting to know just the same. So first we're going to start with ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. I want to get x by itself. First thing I'm going to do is divide everything by a. So you'll notice I divided ax squared by a, bx by a, c by a, and even 0 by a. And as we know, 0 divided by anything is just going to be 0. Not the other way around. That causes an error message. So now I'm at my next step, x squared plus b over ax plus c over a equals 0. What I'm going to do next is subtract c over a to both sides. Why? Because what I can do is take x squared plus b over ax and create a perfect square trinomial. How I'm going to do that is take my b over a and divide that in half. Or divide it by 2, or multiply it by 1/2. And that's going to get me my b over 2a. And as you remember from completing the square, that c term just ends up being squared. Well, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So now if I'm looking at the right-hand side, now what I'm going to try and do is combine these two values. But first, I have to recognize that I'm really taking negative c over a plus b squared over 4a. So what I need to do is create a common denominator, which is going to be 4a squared. There we go, 4a squared, which means I need to multiply c over a. I need to multiply my bottom value by 4a, which means I need to multiply my numerator, my top value, by 4a as well. That gets me my 4ac that we see over here. We see the negative, and then the b squared all over 4a squared. Alright, so now that I've successfully combined the right-hand side, let's take a look at the left-hand side. The left-hand side now is a perfect square trinomial of x squared plus b over a x plus the square of b over 2a, which just simplifies in terms of perfect square trinomial to x plus b over 2a squared. So now I'm at this next stage over here. What I need to do is get rid of the parentheses. So you know what that means. I need to take the square root of both sides. As I take the square root of both sides, I'm left on the left-hand side with x plus b over 2a equals plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 4a squared, which really means I have plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over the square root of 4a squared, which I can still simplify even further to get the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now I'm going to move, the last step is to move my b over 2a over to the right-hand side, so that's going to make it a negative b over 2a. And we notice I have common denominators, so that I can combine everything together to get me my formula of x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, what you might be thinking is, how am I going to remember that? You could just stare at it, write it down on a flashcard, keep staring and staring until you remember it. But if you know the tune, Pop Goes the Weasel, then you know the quadratic formula. You do. Follow the not-so-bouncy dot. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right. Maybe I should go ahead and do that again. You sing along too, because hey, who doesn't love to sing? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Louder! All right, if you want to, you can. If not, that's fine. What we're going to do now is go ahead and use the quadratic formula to solve some problems. First, let's take a look at 4x squared plus 7x minus 3 equals 0. Can I use the cross method? You'll see that the answer is no, I cannot. Can I draw a graph? Well, yeah, kind of. I'll get the answer-ish. I'll get a good estimate. Can I complete the square? Yeah, but you'll notice I have a leading coefficient in front of my x squared. So that makes things a little trickier. I'm just going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then what it means is that we just go ahead and plug in the values. So x equals negative b, which is negative 7, plus or minus the square root of 7 squared minus 4 times 4 times negative 3, which you know is going to end up making that value positive, all over 2 times 4. Which means that simplifies to negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 49 plus 48. Where did that plus 48 come from? Why isn't it minus? Because I'm subtracting a negative, multiplying all that together makes it a positive, all over 8. Which means I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 97 over 8. So far so good, right? Right. So hey, oh, here's a little reminder. Check the discriminant. What does that mean? We'll get back to that. All right, so anyway, continuing on, this means I have x equals negative 7 plus the square root of 97 over 8, or x could equal negative 7 minus the square root of 97. Remember, that's plus or minus, all over 8. So I have my two answers using my handy-dandy calculator. X equals 0.356, or 356 thousandths, or x could equal a negative 2.11, or 2 and 11 hundredths, rounded to 3 significant figures. There's no way you could have done that using any of the other methods. So what does this mean, check the discriminant? Well, this term over here, b squared minus 4ac, that is known as the discriminant. It can tell you whether you will have two solutions, one solution, or no solutions. How will it have no solutions? If b squared minus 4ac equals a negative number, then you will have no real roots because you cannot take the square root of a negative value. That is why the discriminant is important. And here's another reason why it's important. Well, why don't we show you an example? Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is, alright, I've taken a look at something that involves quite a few more steps. So first thing I'm going to do is convert the equation into the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This means I have 4x squared plus 24x plus 27 equals 4x plus 2, or 4x squared plus 20x plus 25 equals 0. If you notice something right now, you can go ahead and say it, but it's going to be important in terms of the quadratic formula. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2, hey! Alright, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the values. I get x equals negative 20 plus or minus the square root of 20 squared minus 4 times 4 times 25 all over 2 times 4. It's just a coincidence that right now the a value is always 4. It won't always be. Alright, so let's go back to our little reminder. Check the discriminant. What does that mean? Let's see. Let me work this out. X equals negative 20 plus or minus. Let's look at the discriminant, that value underneath the square root. 20 squared is 400 minus 4 times 25. 25 times 4 is 100 times 4 is 400. 400 minus 400. That, to me, equals 0. So in this case, when the discriminant equals 0, that's going to tell you something important. Probably something that many of you noticed quite a few steps back over here up at the top. But anyway, x equals negative 20 plus or minus the square root of 0, which equals 0. It doesn't matter. It doesn't exist anymore because we don't need it. And I have x equals negative 20 over 8, which means x equals, if I simplify both, negative 5 over 2. You'll notice here I have one solution. There's a reason I only have one solution. And hopefully you can see why. Alright, so that's it in terms of using the quadratic formula. I hope you had fun. And as you can see, there's a reason why I do not have a future in show business.